Hey, you guys. Today I'll be talking to Cynthia Mathieu. She's a psychologist and a professor of organizational behavior. She is consulted with organizations and she teaches on topics relating to dark personalities in the workplace, employee selection, organizational fraud, and leadership. She has published empirical research on leadership, employee selection, narcissism, and psychopathy in the workplace and employee well-being. She's written a very interesting book called Dark Personalities in the Workplace. I can't wait to talk to her because this, no doubt, will be a very interesting conversation. To my shame, I must admit, I just looked into your website and I ordered your book immediately because that's all that I want to know about this topic. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with you.
Good. Thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm glad that there's interest in the topic.
Having this conversation with you I'm sitting on two chairs today. One is I have a practice, a psychology practice or psychotherapy practice. And the other is I've been working for over 5 years with entrepreneurs and with managers in companies. And I mean, dark personalities is something that I've been crossing all the time. Usually when we start off the coaching trajectory, at a certain point, it's just part of it. So it's something I'm highly interested in to hear more about that today, for sure.
Great. Excellent.
So you've written a book about it. And as I could see on your website where you're explaining the book, I thought it would be very interesting to go over the topics that are written in the book, because I think it just everything that I want to hear more about is in your book. So that would be interesting to do that if you wouldn't mind.
Oh, no, I wouldn't mind at all. It'd be a pleasure. Absolutely. Ask any question you want about dark personalities or the book. I'd be happy to answer.
Okay. First, of course, why are you interested in this topic?
Oh, that's a good question. I did my PhD in clinical psychology, but I was also doing both clinical and industrial organizational psychology at the same time. So it's kind of an odd, I'd say it's probably I didn't follow a traditional line in terms of studies. And then I did a postdoc on psychopathy or mostly psychopathy and major mental disorder. And as I was working as an IO psychologist to pay for my studies and doing my postdoc, I realized that the individuals that I was studying were very similar in terms of profile to the individuals who were making employees suffer within organizations. Mm-hmm. So I was working with an employees assistance program as a clinical psychologist. And then I realized that as employees were describing individuals who perpetrated harassment in the workplace and other types of misbehavior or leadership or abusive leadership behavior, I started seeing, it was very clear to me that it was the same patterns, same types of behavior adapted to the workplace, mind you, but really same types of behaviors that I was seeing in the individuals that I was studying in prison settings. And so, yeah, that was to me kind of a shock and a revelation. And right then I decided I want to dedicate my career to understanding these individuals, but mostly really educating HR professionals, coaches, and organizations on who they are and how to avoid hiring them and promoting them to leadership positions.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Compared to prison environment. Wow.
Well, I mean, there were for sure similarities. I would say that if you compare both, certainly, and there has been research on, for instance, psychopaths in prison settings and corporate psychopaths. What we're finding is that the corporate ones they can score as high on the clinical measures of psychopathy that we use in prison, but they are way higher in all of the interpersonal aspects, manipulation. Mm-hmm. And they were usually given also, as children, and as they grew up, they were given or offered more opportunities. Obviously, oftentimes they come from, families who had a little bit more money. They were given access to a better education, and that, in a sense, made them better. A lot of people would say it made them less dangerous. I wouldn't say so. Just better at the type of violence that they use, better at manipulating the system, better at evading also consequences. Mm-hmm. So a colleague of mine, Dr. Robert Hare, I work with Robert Hare and Paul Babiak, who have written a book. It was the first book on corporate psychopathy, Snakes in Suits. And they call the psychopath a social chameleon. Mm-hmm. They can adapt to any type of situation, really. And and I think in corporate settings, particularly, they will take the color of the organization if it can bring them something, right? Mm-hmm. If they can get what they want.
Yeah, so we're talking about psychopathy. Narcissism is also a word that today is almost a hype, I would say. It's often used. It's often in the media these days. So what are we talking about? What does that all mean?
Yeah, well, that when there's a concept that was developed or a theory that was developed by Del Paulis from UBC in Canada, and he talks about the dark triad. So within the dark triad, you have three dark personalities. You have Machiavellianism, and it comes from a book from an Italian. He was consulting with politicians. And it actually, from that book comes the quote, "The end justifies the means." So Machiavellians are it's the manipulative, I'd say, personality, but they're different from the other two in the sense that they can be less impulsive. Mm-hmm. Whereas narcissists and psychopaths are a little bit more impulsive. They are very associated with corporate fraud, for instance, Machiavellians, because they can conduct fraud over a long period of time. So they can be patient with the type of violence that they use. Whereas the second personality, they're not in order. I'm just in the order that I'm presenting them today. But narcissism, you see, an inflated sense of self, a sense of entitlement as well. They actually believe that they are better than others. It's not just, sometimes when you want to work on your self-esteem, you look at people say you should look at yourself in the mirror in the morning and tell yourself you're the best, you're good, but it's completely different because you're trying to kind of psych yourself into thinking that you are, that you're good, that you're, part of you believes it, right? But mm-hmm. not entirely. Mm-hmm. Whereas narcissists actually truly believe it. Yeah. And there was an interesting study on narcissism, and I'm just sharing it with you just so you can see how they think and how they could be within organizations. So in this study, they had people complete an online test. And it was all controlled by the expert. So the first time around, everybody gets above 90% on the test. And then they start asking people, how are you feeling about your abilities and all of that? So, everyone's saying, I did great. I guess I'm good at that. And then second time around, everybody fails. But 25%. They really fail, not just, they fail. And then they asked the same question, and that's where they saw the difference. People who didn't score high on narcissism would say, I guess I wasn't as good as I thought I was, or these questions were pretty hard, but I wasn't able to answer. Maybe I don't have all the skills. But for the narcissists, their self-evaluation didn't change. Mm-hmm. They still believed they were extremely good at it, but then they blamed they blamed the researcher, they blamed the system, they blamed the computer, they said that there's probably a glitch there. So imagine the image there where you think you're better than others, and then transpose it into the workplace. Mm-hmm. Imagine how they are as leaders. So no introspection whatsoever. If things are good, then it's because of them, of course. Yeah. They take the credit. And if things are not, then they will blame their teams, or they will blame others. They are pretty impulsive, and within the workplace, they become they're manipulative too, but in the workplace, they become dangerous if they feel threatened in the position that they have, if someone contradicts them in public. So the public image is extremely important to them. And usually people are afraid of them. Mm-hmm. In the workplace. They are afraid, not just because of who they are. Usually they have a very strong presence. They will put people down. But others are afraid of them because they can also threaten someone's career, or so it's not an easy, and again, very impulsive in their decisions, not a lot of thinking ahead. And I did a study with one of my colleagues on entrepreneurship. That one might interest you. And we found that individuals who wanted to start their own business scored higher on narcissism than people who, and we compared them to managers in public and private sectors. So it's the profile for entrepreneurs is not necessarily narcissism, but the risk taking and the abilities are similar to what a narcissist would probably show, except that there's a fine line where it's mostly in the lack of empathy, mm-hmm. Believing you're better than others, and inability to kind of to look at your mistakes and own them, and the ability to learn that's not there for narcissists. Whereas for individuals who do have empathy towards others, who want to take care of others, and actually some studies have shown that these individuals won't start the same types of businesses. Well, really? For narcissists, it will mostly, the goals will mostly be, power and money. Mm-hmm. In what they choose in terms of a venture. And then, but for people who score lower, you'll also see, the desire to have a positive impact on society. Yeah. Right. So it's geared towards others. Yeah. So you'll see a difference in the two profiles. And the last personality, which is the most dangerous of the three personalities, is psychopathy. And I often say we had a very hard time. I wouldn't say it's still true, but we had a very hard time even getting published at first on this topic of psychopathy, or corporate psychopathy. We were amongst the first to study it empirically with a measure, and it was not very well received at first. People didn't understand why we were studying it in workplaces, and they certainly, I'd say politically, there was an issue there too. People are very uncomfortable with the term. I think it's changed in the past 10 years, which I think is a very good thing, because the image of the psychopath that you see in movies,
Yeah, exactly,
is really kind of the Silence of the Lambs, kind of just and we see so many movies and TV shows with I'll say quote unquote psychopaths and
serial
and
killers
so
and
pardon me.
yeah, serial killers and stuff.
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And we see only one side of it. Whereas a psychopathy has different features. And two individuals can have the same score and can score clinically as a psychopath, but have different profiles, and where they would be stronger within the psychopathy measure. What we found was that corporate psychopaths score higher than the ones that you will find in prison settings, mostly in factor 1, which is manipulation, callousness, and interpersonal interpersonal characteristics or skills. They are better at manipulating others. And that's probably due to the fact that they've learned how society works. Whereas psychopaths that you find in prison, they're still very manipulative compared to what people call sociopaths, because a lot of people think it's the same thing, but they're two different things. They're two different diagnoses. One is antisocial personality disorder, so we call them sociopaths, and they make up most of, in terms of personality, a much higher percentage within prison settings. Psychopaths are, I'd say, probably around between 10 and 15% of criminals within prison settings would score clinically as psychopaths, but they are responsible for the most violent crimes in society. Sociopaths have had negative or criminal behavior. They have what I call a criminal career. Usually it starts very young, before the age of maturity, even before the age of 18, you'll see some criminal behavior there. They do not have the manipulative skills. They are manipulative, but not as much as the psychopaths are. The other difference is psychopaths, there are emotions that they are unable to feel. Guilt, for example, they don't feel that. Sadness. Some emotions are very, very hard for them. Empathy. So these are emotions that, and brain studies have shown that they don't react to emotions that should trigger those emotions, to images that should trigger those emotions, like other people who score lower on the psychopathy scale.
So would you say that, because that would be a first for me, would you say that a narcissist and a sociopath do respond to these emotions and a psychopath doesn't?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I would say, though, that all three dark personalities, and I would also say sociopaths, score very low on empathy for others. So that's one emotion but in the realm of the different emotions that humans can experience, psychopaths, there is a deficiency there. And they were born with it, most likely. For now, that's what we know. But part of it is, part of psychopathy is biology. And the other part is, what they learn in terms of environment and how they grew up, the opportunities that were given to them. So that would probably be what would differentiate the corporate with the non-corporate psychopaths, where one of the other, one has received probably a better education, was offered, I'd say, tools to navigate society and make them better manipulators, and make them choose probably crimes that are more lucrative, and at the same time it helps them evade any types of consequences. Whereas the other types of, for both, severe violence is possible. That's what people need to understand. There is a study on the name of the author is Perry, and he studied what he called red collar criminals. So they're white collar criminals who actually resorted to murder. And what he said is the notion that white collar criminals, and he says there's a relationship with psychopathy. So psychopaths who would be white collar criminals who would resort to fraud could also resort to extreme violence to make sure that their fraud is not discovered by others. So that's something that I think is also interesting, is although they learn and they are better at navigating society for their schemes or to get what they want, they could also be extremely violent. And one of the reasons might be that they don't feel guilt for what they do. They feel justified, and they have absolutely no moral, no conscience.
And so, I just want to go back to that to make sure I understand. So a narcissist could feel guilt or shame.
They do.
Okay.
They can. They will still impulsively act and react in, their typical narcissist ways. And they will still use others to get what they want. They will lie. So that's part of their manipulation to get what they want, but they can still feel a certain amount of emotions. They would be low again on empathy, low on things, on humility. And they, for instance, when they choose a partner in life, they will choose the partner not to create that type of relationship where it's kind of a partnership, but they will choose a partner that will help them achieve what they want. Right? So usually what we'll find is for men, they will choose a very beautiful woman. And for women, they will, because there are women with dark personalities, less so than men though in society, but they will probably choose a man who has a lot of money. So in either situation, it's to create, or to allow you to get a higher social status. So again, in the way, it's not that they're unable to feel emotions, narcissists, it's more that they are very transactional in their relationships. They will use people to get what they want. So they're very transactional and very geared towards, gaining power, gaining what they want. So they don't care about the consequences, but they are able to feel certain emotions. Whereas psychopaths, some of those emotions are just absent. And there's no difference for a psychopath between finding money on the street and when no one's around and picking it up, or stealing money from someone in front of you. There's absolutely no difference because they don't have that type of conscience. And the same is true for crimes. They do not see the problem in stealing money from the company. They don't see the problem with killing someone. Actually, when they explain it, it's very matter of factly. They explain their crimes, and you don't see a lot of the only type of emotion or that research has found is excitement. When they talk about their crimes. And it's not necessarily an emotion, but that's what you'll find, but nothing in terms of guilt, shame, just the feeling sad for a victim. They're not able to feel those emotions,
but they probably are able to show it.
And that's very good. Absolutely. That's the reason why at a certain, I can't remember exactly when, but they have stopped using group therapy for psychopaths in prison settings, because actually it was associated with an increase of violence recidivism once they were out, because they learned from other prisoners about emotions.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I've had many people ask me, there are two things that I really want to talk about because of what you're saying. Is one is that people are asking me, do they do this on purpose? That's one. And the other is that how much you try to tell people when you encounter someone who or has a relationship with a dark personality or is working with a dark personality, run, Forrest, run, or make sure that you're able to manage this, that you cannot really show them the impact that this can have on them. Maybe first on the purpose part.
Yeah.
Do they do this on purpose?
It's the answer is I'll give you maybe two parts. It's who they are. Mm-hmm. They can't act differently.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in a sense, they're not trying to be narcissistic or psychopathic on purpose. It's who they are, right? Mm-hmm. They've always acted that way as children as well. So it's something that is kind of, it's who they are. It's the way that they act in every type of situation. So it's not just at work, it's everywhere throughout their life. But do they take advantage of others on purpose? Of course.
Yeah.
They know what they're doing while they're doing it, but they cannot act otherwise, because that's how they are. They're geared towards getting what they want, no matter the consequences to others. So linking it to your second question, how easy would it be to help them change? Using, for instance, coaching or psychotherapy, I'd say very low. The chances of really helping them change is very low, unfortunately. And how it's really related to the bad boy syndrome that women are attracted to. And it just, it's unfortunate because, and I don't know if that's universal. I can certainly say that that syndrome is true for Canada and the US. I can't say for, you'll tell me if it's still, yeah, okay.
Nodding.
Okay. And interpersonally, I think in many movies, women are taught that, these bad boys who have very negative behavior will eventually find the one and be true to that person and be honest with that person. And
I think in a corporate setting, I have a feeling that the manager or the owner of the company feels I will be able to control this behavior or that person by all kinds of ways, but they're mistaken.
Absolutely.
There. Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you've had the same question, but in an article I wrote, I actually called it the organizational bad boy syndrome, where organizations are thinking, this candidate is very attractive in a sense that they are well-spoken. I believe them when they tell me that they will be able to go get the contracts and bring me a lot of money and be extremely innovative in their approach and take my company to the next level. So they are very attractive for organizations. And then some have asked me, well, shouldn't I be hiring these types of individuals? And I want to, but can you give me tips on how to manage them so that I can only get the positive and avoid the negative? And that's completely impossible because of the way that they are geared.
Yeah.
They will take advantage of the company no matter how much the company tries to make them happy by giving them what they want. They will always want more.
Yeah, it's not an if, it's a when.
Exactly.
And a how.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes. And sometimes in certain, and that's why in certain organizations, I see coaching with individuals, and I'm thinking, okay, there are things that you can change in the sense that If they understand that there is going to be consequences, if they see others having consequences for some of the negative behavior, they will be more careful. I'm not saying that you'll avoid all of the negative behaviors they could have. They will definitely be more careful. You can also teach them certain behaviors that you find acceptable, and they will follow if they find that it is beneficial
for them.
Not because they understand that it's hurting others, that you can't talk to others that way, that won't happen. But they might do it for a little while. But again, it's even a question of when they will start again. Yeah. And if they ever stopped, or if it just became invisible,
or hidden. Yeah,
more hidden. Exactly. And oftentimes you know, when I'm presenting on positive leadership, or you'll find some of these individuals and they will just say, you know, nothing about business.
Yeah.
This is all just rosy posy, but you know, we have deadlines and I need my people to do this. So they discard anything that's related to good human interpersonal interactions or interpersonal relationships within the workplace. They don't see the positive in that, only because it takes their eye off of their goal, which is power, money, and then maybe more power and more money. But that's basically the goals that they have.
Yeah, and I think they also often can think in ways to get it that we don't think about, that because they're like boundaryless on how to get what they want.
Absolutely. They're very creative in that.
Yeah.
We'll give them that. They're extremely creative. And because of that lack of empathy, it really opens many doors. Mm-hmm. And if you score them on, for instance, conscientiousness, mm-hmm. right? In the big five of the personality profiles, there's one that is conscientiousness, and they score extremely low. Mm-hmm. So if this individual works and they often are attracted to financial organizations, you will have to have people, or someone look at their documents and all of the legal things, because they will definitely try to bend the rules to their advantage. They do not believe in rules. Yeah. And I'm not just talking, that's all three dark personalities. That's not just psychopaths, all three dark personalities. They believe that if you're bright enough to have found the loophole in the system, then you should absolutely exploit it without ever looking back or feeling guilty about it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And yet they can come into your company without you noticing it in the beginning. I always thought this is something that you can sense from a gut feeling, but what you're saying is nah.
And research in IO psychology, for the book, I was looking at a lot of research, and it actually indicated that, and I thought so too, as an IO psychologist, that you kind of develop that gut feeling, right? As you know, even as a clinical psychologist, it is true sometimes that, you've probably developed more of a clinical approach or way to look at others and see certain signs. But these individuals are so good. And the thing is, during a selection process, the goal is to try to find the candidate that is best fitted for the position and who will bring the most success to the organization. So that's the goal. That's the goal. And then usually you fit them into a certain number of, a certain box where you're looking for a list of skills or competencies that you've identified for that specific position. And they know it. And they will lie, absolutely lie on their resumes. They will lie during the interview. Some of them will even lie on having obtained diplomas.
Wow.
Yep. What fake universities that exists, and they look absolutely true, but it's very interesting when you start looking at it. And a lot of organizations are still doing the unstructured interview, just, gut feeling type of thing, where I'm going to meet the and especially, and I don't know why, but at the higher level.
Yeah, very true. I recognize that. Very true.
And oftentimes it's more political than, you already have kind of a candidate in mind. You'll see 2 or 3, but there's something political about it. And you find that they are doing well in a certain position. So you're thinking, oh, this is going to be a great fit. So you let your guard down, and you let all those biases come in, and then you're already positively biased for the candidate, which then prevents you from really looking at those maybe elements that would have brought red lights in another situation if you had structured your interview differently. But I see that more at the higher level within many types of organizations. People are saying, yeah, but it's not the same type of interview. We don't necessarily need but you do.
Yeah, you do. I think even the more you bring in higher intelligence, the more you need to definitely take a look twice. Yeah.
Exactly. And you find that the level of impact that, a higher position can have on your teams, on your organization, they have access to much more resources. They have access to vendors. They have access to so many people outside of the organization. They sign contracts, they make deals, they as leaders have such a huge impact on the workforce compared to maybe, lower level positions where they can still have a very negative impact on the organization, but they're not a visible figure of your organization, and they don't manage 50 people. So it's a little bit different. But as soon as they get into those management roles, then you'll start seeing signs: turnover in that team, absenteeism being higher, psychological distress. And a lot of times when I start asking questions, people are saying, no, but people left for better positions elsewhere. And that's when those exit interviews are so important. Sometimes people will lie because they're afraid of the individual. So you won't get, but once in a while, if you continue, you'll start seeing patterns.
I think that's a very good one to remember. Exit interviews are so important because, also I've also heard stories where a psychopath is letting people go with a whole story of why that they're incompetent and all God knows what, and it's not true. But it's just someone they cannot control or they don't want, and they just let them go. And then years after, you hear a story about why they left and what their true story is, and it's incredible.
Yeah, and the way that they work when there's different phases when they get into the organization, and at first it's very hard to see. It's very hard to identify those behaviors or those things that they are doing. But eventually, some individuals around them will start seeing that something is not quite right in their interactions, but also in how they conduct business, right? they'll see something. It's usually in terms of, you know, documents or money or something that's being done, and they can sense that there's something there. So I'm willing to bet that the individuals that they let go, because it's part of their manipulation. Yeah. So once some individuals confront them about their behavior, then they will start discrediting that individual. Yeah. They will ruin their career completely. Yeah. And I'm willing to bet that these individuals that these employees who are colleagues who have noted that there's something wrong, that a lot of them leave. Some of them get fired by the psychopath, of course, but only after they've completely destroyed their reputation within the organization. So you were saying, should we tell people run? I like the run, Forrest, run. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. Unless you really want to take on that individual, which will take a lot of energy. It's dangerous, both professionally and personally, I would say. And they will make you sick of the situation, because there are no rules for them.
Yeah, exactly.
There's no empathy.
Yeah, I often say, remind yourself, the way that they can think dark, you never will. It's just, exactly. You don't go there. Even if you want to, you don't go there.
No,
you don't have that option.
No, and you know how sometimes you read books like from Stephen King or any, and you're thinking, how can a mind go that dark, right? It's a book, but I'm just saying, and they do, because of the fact that for psychopaths, they do not feel certain emotions. If you're not connected to other humans, right? They're human predators. Everyone around them is just a prey. If you see it that way.
Yeah, but I remember talking to an entrepreneur, and she told me about someone that she was working with, and I said, this sounds really not okay. You need to look into this. And I asked about empathy. And the reaction that she gave me, I hear a lot of that response. Yeah, well, he's absolutely not empathetic towards anyone. No, he doesn't have empathy at all. Okay, then something's wrong. Yeah, but the results are good. And I'm like, yeah, but this is not okay. Yeah, but it's okay. No, it's not. But they don't seem to see that.
And this is a shift that needs to happen, not just in organizations.
Yeah.
I believe in society.
Obviously.
In society in general. We need to, we don't have our priorities straight. We have been looking for years at, people who others admire. It's always related to money or some type of power. So basically results.
Yeah.
You find organizations, what they want is results. How people get there?
Yeah, not so.
That's their own business. I'm paying them to get results. I see results. And that's a wrong way of seeing things, because more and more new generations are looking for, it's all the HR marketing thing, is they want to be in an organization that's healthy.
Yeah.
And organizations need to start looking at the cost of keeping that person on. Look at how many people have left the team or your organization in the past since that person has come on board. That costs a lot of money.
Yeah, an immense amount of money. And before they leave or have been let go, they also are not able to function fully, because they're not able to breathe. They're scared. Yeah.
Exactly. Do you know that 60% of corporate fraud is never reported to the authorities?
Wow.
60%. Because organizations don't want their reputations to be hurt. But by doing so, you're just sending out a message to all those individuals with dark personalities out there that come and work for us.
Yeah.
Come and work for us. And we're all result oriented. As long as you bring results, we won't look at how you're conducting your business.
Yeah.
Eventually, though, I mean, social media just it could hurt a company very, very badly if the individual conducts bad business or when things are out in the open. That companies need to look at that and look at the changing the organizational culture to more human. And it's not either or.
Yeah, exactly.
You can find leaders who have empathy for others and who are very goal oriented.
They exist.
So you don't have to compromise, right?
Yeah, they exist.
You're gonna say they're hard to find, but they do exist. They do. But when you're hiring a leader, what are the competencies you're looking for? If you're only looking for this result orientation and the task oriented skills, then that's, you're taking a risk.
Mm-hmm.
If you add just a few skills in there, and you mentioned it, like empathy, humility,
mm-hmm.
listening, cooperation, then you'll have a completely different profile. But of course, those are not even in the interview. They're not even considered as key components of leadership.
Yeah. Wow, that's true. That is so true.
So all the things that you were mentioning that you're seeing in your practice, these are the elements when you can identify what's lacking in these individuals. Those are absolutely the elements that you should add, not just for selection purposes, but also for I'm looking for the term, performance assessment.
Yeah.
Keep asking companies. And there's this great article. And the title was Why Bad Leaders Stay in Good Places. And it was very interesting because what the authors were saying was the higher up you get within an organization, the less likely you are to get a true performance appraisal every year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is definitely a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So I see a lot of organizations, after the hashtag Me Too and Black Lives Matters, they're all, they've all created all those great policies, but they don't apply them.
Yeah.
They don't apply them. And then what do you think would be the change if we started evaluating leaders on their performance, but instead of having one superior who has probably been manipulated by the psychopath or the narcissist, evaluating that person, we did 360-degree evaluations. Mm-hmm. So they're evaluated anonymously by their employees, by their colleagues, and by their leader. Then you'd see a completely different portrait of the individual. And what if we gave bonuses and raise to leaders based on how happy their employees are, on how productive their employees are, and how well they are within their team. Yeah, then things would change.
Yes, for sure.
But even though organizations say yes, honesty and integrity and all of that is in our organizational values, well, it's written on your website. But
is it applied?
How are you making sure that your leaders are actually good ambassadors for those leaders, for those values? How do they translate into leadership behavior, into interpersonal behavior amongst team members? How are you ensuring that that positive culture that you're selling to everyone on your website, and that it's actually true and it's there? See, so there's a shift there that needs to
happen. Yeah, and I think, well, I don't really talk to like these multinationals, but I talk to smaller businesses of 250 and under amount of staff, and I can see how owners or even managers they know there's an issue, but they don't respond to it as long as they don't feel it themselves personally.
That's human nature. Yeah. Even in clinical psychology, you'll tell people, unless as human beings, unless we hurt, we're very unlikely to change anything. Mm-hmm. Right? And it takes a lot of energy to do so.
Yeah.
And I would say that small businesses are more at risk. Because one individual with a very negative behavior will have, it can be the end of the business.
Yeah.
And because small businesses don't necessarily have the same amount of resources, oftentimes where they cut is on HR, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. They'll cut on human resources and say, well, we can do the hiring, we can do the managing of employees, or but no, because it really absolutely takes skills, and you have to learn how to do it, and you have to, and a lot of individuals who are managing, even the president of company, smaller companies, they just don't have the skills. They'll never learned. It's not that they can't develop them. It's just that they just never, they were taught entrepreneurship, and that was, how to make profit and how this and how that and how to, but not about how do I manage individuals? How do I make my employees happy? What are the red flags that something's happening within my organization and I should act very quickly before there's a huge impact on my company? So they're not taught that, and unless they go to someone like you who coaches them and can see it and can help them by themselves. And oftentimes when they go to you, it's too late. There's already been a lot of damage. And as you said, they've been hurt themselves. They're probably extremely tired from having to try to manage something that they don't understand.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're able to suffer. I mean, owners of small businesses, they usually work many hours. They're able to suffer and don't breathe, don't get air. And so when they come to me, they often don't come to me with saying, like, I have this very toxic person in my environment and I don't know what to do with it. No, they usually present themselves with, I am anxious, I feel insecure, I don't know how to give feedback, all of that kind of stuff. And I have a past that is quite heavy and all of that, but hardly ever do they come and tell me I'm not able to breathe because I have someone in my organization that I'm just plainly afraid of to talk to really say what I'm thinking. I don't know how to solve this issue.
And it's actually the same thing with victims in general, mm-hmm. who have to deal with these individuals mm-hmm. on a personal level, not just on an organizational level.
Exactly.
Well, you'll find that they're there. They start talking about, I'm not feeling quite right at work. I'm extremely stressed. And then you dig in a little deeper and you find out that they're victims of harassment. They're not even seeing it. They're just talking about a toxic environment, but it's actually one toxic individual.
Yeah.
And the first step is to make them see that they're not responsible for what's happening. Yeah. The individual is. And then understand all of the manipulation. You have to kind of deconstruct.
Yeah, exactly.
What the dark individual has created in terms of image and just the kind of web of lies.
Yeah, exactly. Just, wow, we've already talked for an hour. I will ask you one more question. And that is, if people are listening to this and they recognize a profile in their company or in their personal life, and they want to get rid of that person, to say it disrespectfully, how do they go about that? Because they need to be smart or strategic in this.
I would say first off, don't go at it alone. So just, get help as soon as possible.
Yeah.
But you have to be extremely careful in the help that you're getting. I have seen in many instances, these individuals being very close or having created very close ties with HR.
Yeah.
Why? Because they know that if eventually some of their behavior is discovered, the complaint will go to HR, right? So that's the first thing. And then the second thing I would say is make sure you're accompanied, make sure you have a professional who's able to help you. I would actually I would find someone outside of the organization, just because it'd be easier to have those conversations. The person doesn't know the other individual, and there's no way that they can manipulate the professional because they're outside of the organization. And also just having the conversation in a confidential setting, not in the organization. That would be the first step. And making sure that you're healthy enough, that you're in a place in your life where you can take on such, because it's going to be huge.
Yeah.
As you were saying, it's even impossible to imagine the things that they are able to do, the way that they conduct their business, right? So it's very hard for people to create a case against them.
Yeah.
And they have people who support them everywhere in the organization. So it's kind of like walking on a minefield where you don't know who's against you, who you don't know who's for this, who's going to protect this individual. So I would say it's doable, but you have to put everything in writing, never meet the individual, nothing verbal, because they will absolutely lie about what went on in that meeting. So don't meet them alone. Make sure you're with someone else so that you have witnesses. Put everything in writing. Let's say after a meeting you've had for bad conduct or behavior, make sure that you write down all the elements that were addressed during that meeting and everybody signs it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's being extra careful, going with email invitations and things like that to keep as much of a trail of the different instances or interventions that you will have. And I would look into, if you can, interpersonal relationships. So usually what we know is, first off, most fraudsters will also have an HR file where there's been complaints of, how they behave. So if you want to do a thorough kind of assessment of the individual to create a case, you will need to talk to people who have left the organization. You will need to talk to their colleagues, but mostly you'll need to talk to their employees. But you will need to set something in place where people who are talking to you are also protected.
Yeah.
So again, it takes more than one person to be able to create something like that. And one thing's for sure, all three dark personalities, we know that they're associated with, they, as I was saying, very low conscientiousness. So if you dig into all of the written contracts they've written, you will find things there. They are not detail oriented at all. So you will find faults in the way they conduct business if you start investigating. So I'd say bring in an accountant, make sure that they can verify everything. So it's investing also in professionals who can support you. If you're a small business, it's a lot harder to do, but I would bring in a consultant who is an expert and who can kind of oversee the investigation for sure. And I'll add, you'll probably need psychotherapy in terms of just psychological support, because it will have an impact on your health, and it will be extremely stressful for a while. And again, they will They will lie. They will try to discredit you. They will try to hurt your reputation, your career. Even sometimes they will intervene in your personal life. So that's something that can be that's something that's just unexpected for most people. They wouldn't expect it to go to that extent, but I've seen it. So it is possible. So you have to be extremely careful. You have to have the energy and the resources to do so. Otherwise, it won't be possible.
Yeah, and I think in smaller businesses, they often are involved in your personal life because you start off with exactly what you said. You do an interview, you do it differently than you do with people who are lower in rank, and you become friends in a sense, you work side by side, so they know a lot about you. Yeah.
And they will definitely use it.
Yeah.
But then again, you can also use it.
Mm-hmm.
To get a sense of who the individual is, right? You can't use necessarily legally the personal stuff, but you can certainly see. Yes, it certainly paints you a portrait of who the person is, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. But it's and again, it might seem like a lot of money to bring in someone from the outside to consult on this, but it's really an investment, because the longer you keep that individual, because when you're at the point, when you have a small business, when you're at the point where you're seeking help to maybe try to get, as you were saying, like get rid of the individual or give them consequences, it means there's already damages that are being done. And the longer you keep that individual within your organization, the worse it's going to get. And it's going to hurt the morale, because employees are going to start seeing that as a leader, that someone's doing things within your company and you're not doing anything. Then it's just going to spread to all of your other employees, and hurt morale. And a lot of people will probably leave. So you want to make sure that you deal with it as promptly as possible.
Yeah, exactly. As quickly as possible. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for your time. It's
been a pleasure.
Yeah,
it really has been.